Hey, y'all. Welcome to today's live stream. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're at. Thanks for joining us today. I'm really excited. We've got a really cool guest joining us today. Jess Joyce is a content marketing and SEO consultant, and she's going to be breaking down her viral social content hit extraordinaire, which is her SaaS content marketing checklist. I'm really excited to dive in because I think she covers so much ground about SaaS content marketing and SEO best practices, what it takes to really rank and drive traffic and drive conversions in a very simple and easy to understand package, which is the checklist. So super excited to dive in with her on that today. Before we get into it, I do have a couple of announcements, of course. Number one, I just want to give a shout out to today's sponsor. Thank you to Ahrefs, who's sponsoring us today. If you're not already familiar with Ahrefs, it is, of course, an all-in-one SEO and content research platform. They have a million different tools that you can use to dig into competitors, conduct keyword research, in-depth SEO analysis, site audits, all kinds of awesome stuff. And what's really cool about Ahrefs right now is that they actually have a free version. If you're not aware of this, you can use the Ahrefs Webmaster Tools 100% for free. So you can sign up for an account. You can add your website, and it's going to do a site audit crawl. It's going to have recommendations. It's going to share a bunch of information with you about your site's health and your content and your SEO and all that stuff. So if you want to check out the free Ahrefs Webmaster Tools, hit up bit.ly/Ahrefsjess. That's our link for today. Once again, shout out to our sponsors, Ahrefs. Thank you so much for your support. Next order of business, I have three requests for you, 2 requests and 1 invitation. First and foremost, pop into the chat, say hello, let us know who's here. How about tell us your favorite color? That'd be awesome. Pop that into the chat so we can see who's joining us. Number 2, please like and subscribe. So hit the like button on this video. It's going to help other folks find it. It's going to help with the algorithms and all the magic behind the scenes there. And secondly, subscribing to our channel to stay up to date. We've got some amazing workshops, Q&As, content from some of the smartest folks in content marketing and SEO coming up in the next several months. So would love to have you join us for those future sessions. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube and make sure that you join us for all of those. And finally, I'm going to invite you to join us in our community. We have a free content marketing and SEO community called Top of the Funnel. And we just today launched a brand new website. So you can check it out at jointofu.co. As I said, we've got about 3,000 content marketing and SEO folks in there, freelancers, agency people, in-house marketers, and there's just all kinds of great discussions, Q&A, people sharing and asking for tips and feedback and advice, tool recommendations. We've got work opportunities. I think there have been probably 100 work opportunities shared in the last week or two. So just a lot of really awesome stuff, a lot of super smart content marketing and SEO folks inside Top of the Funnel. Once again, it's 100% free to join via Slack. So go to our website, jointofu.co, and become a member. We'd love to see you in there. All right. With all of my announcements out of the way, once again, I just want to introduce today's guest, Jess Joyce, who's going to be joining us. Really excited to have her and dive into her SaaS content marketing checklist.
Hi.
Hey, Jess, thank you so much for joining us. So first of all, as I mentioned on the in the intro there, I think if people have not come across this checklist already, it was sort of a viral smash hit, was it not?
Yeah, it's been one of our biggest ones that we've done on LinkedIn. We've done a lot of trying and testing and things as one does with the platforms, and LinkedIn seems to be a big one for what we're trying to target for B2B SaaS specifically. So this is definitely a copy of it is a B2B SaaS checklist for your website. So we've broken it up into different parts for like different things that we shared. But the checklist is just a big giant list of everything that we've seen and that we suggest that folks add, because now we're starting to see that convergence of like not just SEO of like updating a title tag anymore, right? That's kind of not even a thing. It is, but like really, is honestly in the new version of SEO, or the latest version, whatever we're calling it, is I think we have to be as close to the money as possible, or as close to like revenue or like conversions or whatever we can do, right? So that turns into us being not just SEOs, but being multi-faceted in our approaches, which is where the checklist kind of comes in. It includes like video optimization and CRO and a whole bunch of other things that come into play when it does that as well. I'm sorry for the way that I sound right now. I'm just a little bit sick as well, but I'm here and I'm excited to be here. It doesn't downgrade my excitement. It just is what happens when you have a child.
Well, thank you so much for sticking it out with us, even though you're not feeling well, and hopefully it'll be worth the while here for joining us. But yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think, you know, the way that we think about SEO has sort of it's matured, right? It's gotten more complex. I think everyone feels that. I think that's part of the reason why this checklist was such a success for you guys, is because there's just so, you know, there's new layers, it feels like, every day kind of being added on to the SEO equation. And you know, obviously sort of the fundamental audit stuff, like you mentioned, you know, hey, updating your title tags and setting up your H1s and that kind of stuff. Obviously that foundational stuff is still important, but because we've got all these other layers that are added on, it's just like we need some kind of a system to organize and track and kind of understand what those practices look like.
Yeah, 100%. I think, all that stuff, like if somebody comes to you today and is like, I still need an audit about something, you'd be ridiculous not to include those things. But like most of the sites that we look at these days, they have all those things too. So maybe it's a movement of the internet as well. Like we've all matured to a point where that stuff isn't as important anymore, because all that stuff is included. Like most of the sites that we work on are on big CMSs, right? Like they're all on WordPresses or Webflows or the big guys that are out there, or headless CMSs too, if they're rocking that kinds of stuff. And odds are, if they're bringing us in at that point, they've already kind of put in the foundational elements that they kind of need to just try out these things. They're hitting roadblocks in that process, right? Like they don't really know how to up, or I hate to use this term, but 10x their which might not be a thing anymore in the new world of search, but you know, we'll continue to try to make it 10x. So yes, to 10x whatever. So whatever guidance we can help and provide people with is where it kind of comes from. And this checklist as well, I'd like to just give a shout out to, is I work with myself these days and with my business partner. His name's Nam. And our company is called Inbound Scope. So it's the two of us that kind of do this together. And he's been kind of spearheading these like checklists and like these beautiful graphics. So shout out to Whimsical as well, who are fantastic, and build a wonderful platform that allows us to be able to share a lot of these ridiculously difficult concepts that I feel like a lot of us in this chat and yourself and I understand, but people outside of our bubble don't understand. So I think explaining a lot of that is as well where the checklist comes into. Because people outside of our little bubble, like Brighton is going on right now, so I'm sure nobody outside of this chat would know that Brighton is going on right now. But it's a thing for us, right? It's a big our Super Bowl, so to say.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I think again, you know, I'm excited to dive into the checklist, because I do think that, you know, as you mentioned, taking these concepts and sort of breaking them down into something that's accessible, especially for non-SEO people, is first of all an art form. So kudos to you all for doing that in whatever format that takes. And secondly, it's just so critical, you know, especially again, as SEO only becomes more complex. You know, we have to avoid falling into the jargon trap and being able to explain and justify this stuff in a way that executives and sort of layman people can understand.
The jargon trap. That's exactly it. I could probably spend 30 minutes sitting here and just saying words that only us understands, but please don't ever say that to a C-level ever.
Right.
Well, let me share the checklist. I think I have share screen. I don't have two monitors. So am I going to share? There we go. Okay. Bada boom. Is that showing for everyone?
We have got it up. Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so this is a copy of the checklist. If you ever need a copy of it, it's still in my LinkedIn, and I'm sure Tyler will include it as well after. and all these things that go along. It's still sitting on our LinkedIn. This one got like 1,000 comments and like over 100,000 impressions, which is pretty good for us. It's wild that this many people, it resonated with this many people. So thanks, LinkedIn, for the love. And we've broken it up into sections. So we have content repurposing, because that's a thing now, CRO and positioning, external links, images, insights gathering, internal links, meta descriptions, readability, search intent, and strategy. And honestly, you probably could share this with a high level person, because I don't think there's a ton of jargon, but it does kind of go for both sides of the coin, which is also why I think it resonated so much, is that we didn't have to put in a ton of jargon into these things for it to resonate throughout the internet, since we are trying to target like heads of SEO at companies. The first comment on there was a head of SEO at a company that we were working with. So I felt like that was a really good indicator that we'd hit the market in the right area. But yeah, it includes like a ton of stuff. Like we have a bunch of graphics that go along with this too. So this is my pitch to follow us on LinkedIn. Jargon schmargon. I enjoy some jargon too, Jesse, and I'm happy to jump on a call with anybody and talk jargon. But I think being an SEO and selling SEO are two completely different things that go into this. And using all the jargon that we use outside of our little bubble is really difficult for anybody else to understand. And we find this in ramping up clients, and I'm sure some of you in the chat have also found that too. So yeah, we even put this in our content. Honestly, look at this. We even included quality and avoid jargon. So wonderful call out right out of the gate, right? And this holds true for not just our little bubble of SEO, but it includes whatever bubble that you're writing content for. And we find this a lot within like niches of niches of niches, which is pretty much what you're writing for these days, right? So you're not just writing for like bikes, you're writing for like speed bikes that hit like racers that go up and down mountains. So you have to, in that case, you probably should use jargon. You should use their jargon. But you need to make sure that if you're pulling people in, that the readability is at a level that they understand too, which is the navigation of the internet, right? And then we include things like H1s, of course, as much as we say like, that stuff really isn't where things come from these days. Google might end up pulling that as your meta title instead of your actual titles. So like we found that, and sometimes if they match, then that ends up being the title that Google ends up pulling into the SERPs. So that's cool. Subheaders, we've got headers, subheaders, intro paragraphs, all the wonderfulness that goes along through here. Quality, this is a big thing we've been telling people lately. And Tyler and I were just chatting about this a little bit off camera, is giving a little bit of a recap in the article as like a TLDR, like a Reddit style, which we find is helpful for folks who are getting featured snippets these days, or for the folks that are in the States that are getting the AI stuff that's coming through there. Because unfortunately, I'm in Canada, and I see a lot of folks in chat are in Canada, so we don't get the lovely AI stuff yet as much. But you'd be silly if you're not researching that. And like we have clients that are in the States too, so I sit on VPNs to make sure that you check that as well. So we found like that making sure that your TLDR paragraph, or like an intro, or however you wish to surface the information from the blog or the post or whatever you're doing, is a really great way to get that featured snippet, and also is a really great qualifier for anybody who's coming in to possibly purchase your product or your service or whatever you're doing, because then they can just read that little TLDR and understand if the rest of this post is for them. If they find value in it, then they'll keep reading. Otherwise, they can just go back and find something else in the Googleverse, right? Or find another query that ends up taking them to somewhere else. We also like to include beyond that is to have like the subject matter expert, which I think is going to be really the key in growing your content as this whole AI thing churns out and does it all. We like to work closely with whatever subject matter expert it is in whatever SaaS B2B company that we're working with, whether or not that's like a half an hour deep dive with them, or we pull in a lot of sales recordings and customer support tickets to find the understanding of the subject matter expert's point of view. We also like to talk to the account managers or anybody in the account team or who's building the product, right? We work with one client who actually has started putting videos of the person who runs their product on YouTube, which I think is a fantastic approach to have that visibility for that product person that's out there. But not only that, is to show their subject matter expert review process in there and make sure that they're highlighted as the person who's doing that. So that makes sense so far?
Yeah, I think a lot of really great points here. Excited to continue diving in. Real quick before you go forward, just give us a bit of context on like how you actually apply this. Like, are you sort of going through this checklist literally with every piece of content, or how do you kind of actually use this in practice?
Yeah, sure. Great question. We do this kind of with clients in a review process as we get into retainers with them or like ongoing work with them, usually. And then we go through this and understand of where or how we can connect these parts to their websites. Because there's once you get into these things, it ends up being very layered and nuanced. So like we're working with one client now who doesn't want to do anything with product URLs, which is kind of a bummer because I feel like that's something that we could really work with since their product URLs are public to the internet. But that's where you don't prioritize something as opposed to like these things, which you could do throughout the web. So we go through this usually with the client and say, is the hero image, can we update this hero image and make it a little clear with the messaging? Does it fit all the OG images? Does it need to be something different? Is it like a non-standard image, like is it a junky image that anybody can get off the web, or is it something of you guys and your products that you've made specifically for that? Which I honestly think is where AI can kind of come in too, because you could actually make these images with AI for everything. And I think there's some incredible examples out there of people who have done that. The guy who runs Humans of Martech, that podcast, he does incredible images of all the guests that are on there, and I believe he uses AI for all of them. So I think it's a really great way to like include that in there, and he uses probably the same prompt for everyone, but like flips out the person that he's talking to, which I think is a really great feature, and that's a really great hook to get people in, right? Like if your images are something that somebody wants to pull into, then sure, great. Then it helps you not using stock images the same as everyone else. Like the barrier to entry is just going to be so much more up every time, right? Like stock images, anybody can go out and get a stock image. Which,
yeah.
So
just to clarify there, so it sounds like some of these checklist items are more, kind of program wide, right? Like things that you want to kind of optimize looking at the entire content marketing program. And then some of them are more like page level, like, what is the image on this specific page, or how is the headline positioned, etc.
Definitely, yeah. It depends on the CMS and everything that we're using. So making sure that we can implement template-wide changes to put in Jira tickets or however that flow goes, and then working with the content team on the lower end items of like, what can we manage, of like updating all the images or making sure everything has copy focused on their benefits, that kind of thing. Which is something that we've been working on a lot more, actually, is kind of shifting our thinking from like just SEO and keywords to like making sure it's like standard marketing language. I hate to say that, but it is. It's copy that focuses on users and their benefits. Whoa. Right?
So easy to forget or overlook when you're, when you've got a whole other process and workflow that you're working through and you're not putting that lens on or that cap on and thinking about it in that particular way.
Totally. And it's easy to forget that you don't think about that stuff because we've been so keyword focused and topic focused for so long. But like making sure that you indicate that the user is there and that you can pull in their benefits for the user is still how people are going to convert. So I love that. Differentiations of current solutions as well is what we do. That can kind of go into like different pages as well. Like it's a pretty standard SaaS play of doing competitor pages or differentiator pages, how you differentiate from your competition. Fantastic things, because even if You don't think that they're looking that up. They are looking that up. I'm sure, Tyler, you've had to have those conversations with clients, and I definitely have had to have those conversations, and I still continually have those conversations with clients about whether or not it's worth making competitor pages or differing pages. And I think it's definitely helpful, whether or not you name them in name or you say that you are the best solution for X, and make yourself different in your messaging and your wording, which again comes back to marketing. So I feel a lot of this checklist kind of flows back to a lot of marketing things more than SEO, which again, shock, I'm sorry. But that's how I feel like where we're moving is to a lot of not just updating titles and stuffing keywords in there, because everyone can do that at this point. I think making sure that you're speaking to your audience is the real kicker that comes in a lot of this checklist. Cool. So we have a whole bunch of other things in here is because that I feel like are pretty straightforward, but you never know. Is making sure your content is consistent, an exit intent offer, which I'm kind of on the fence of, but we put it in here because pop-ups being a thing. But if you're selling e-commerce, then that's kind of a standard thing that comes up with those things too, right? Most Shopify's have exit intents offers on some sort of things. So that's pretty standard. And I think because Google had an update a while ago that was pop-ups, and they didn't like to have pop-ups all over the place, but I feel like they pulled that back a bit. Yeah, like as long as it's not like overabundance in your face, then I think you're okay with something like an exit intent pop-up. So I think that's okay. Text font is large enough to contrast with the background. Please check in with your designer friends on these ones, and make sure that your text is large enough. I used to be a web developer, and when people used to come to me and say that they have old eyes, I would fluff it off and be like, I don't know. I'm still gonna make like the 16-point font happiness through my world. But I understand what they were talking about now. The Jess of today needs the bigger fonts. So please, for the love of the internet, make sure that your font is legible and big enough, and check in with your designer friends that it bounces off the screen in a proper manner, and that it doesn't get lost in the colors and the stuff. There's a whole bunch of websites I'm sure that you can go to, so we could add them in here as well, that you can check the contrast of the fonts with the backgrounds. This isn't SEO at all, but like I feel like it's such a big thing that you can show your expertise even as an SEO and be like, listen, this font like bleeds into the background. Has anybody seen that before? And then you can bubble that up to somebody else within the organization, right? So you're making yourself more useful as not just a subject matter expert in SEO, you are an internet subject matter expert as well. So I think that's really helpful. Especially if you work on the internet as long as we have, like Tyler has worked on the internet as long as all of the rest of us. So like, yeah, we see a lot of this stuff throughout the web, right? Then we get kind of down into CTAs and trust elements. Trust elements is a big thing. Huge thing in SEO, especially right now. And we try to embed this as much as we possibly can in every page of every website. What that means is different throughout every website, whether or not they have like quotes from people who say that they're the best in the entire world, or they have case studies. We work with some people who have case studies, some people have quotes. In B2B SaaS, we find it's a lot of the review websites that folks end up bubbling up the G2s, all that stuff, and all their starred ratings that go across that, hence the badges, ratings, and stats. And we've actually found that it really does make a difference, especially if you can pull in the star ratings in Google, so you can put in that review schema specifically. We found that it makes a difference, especially if you're looking at competitor to competitor in the SERP, and you have 10,000 reviews from awesome people throughout the universe, but your competitor has 2. Like, there's an obvious difference in click-through rate there. So we're not directly affecting like what people see, we're directing how they would click and the value that they get from said software. And we got that in for a competitor page like a couple months ago, and that was awesome. We've seen a really high click-through rate for the ones that go through there. So Schema as well for the win, which I'm not sure if we have in our list here, but Schema is wonderful. So make friends with your developers, as well as I just said, make friends with your designers. Who else do we need to make friends with here? Everyone.
Well, as I say, I think, you know, that's one of the really interesting and valuable parts about having a system and a checklist like this. You know, as we've mentioned, SEO has become more complex. There are all these elements that are, you know, quote unquote, not really SEO, but they do affect your work, right? And they affect the outcomes that you can achieve. Things like, you know, the UX and the font size and all of this stuff has some impact on everything. And so just having some kind of way to organize and think through all of those little details is just so valuable.
Totally. And I think a lot of these are internet, like, should be internet checklists too. So we've positioned it to like a SaaS content checklist, but this could honestly be like an internet checklist. Like you go through this in your website. So maybe we repackage it soon as an internet checklist as well, because I think it's really helpful for just like everyone, which is wonderful.
Totally. Yeah. Just real quick for folks who maybe are just still joining us, if you want to get access to this checklist that Jess is reviewing, you can go to bit.ly/Jess checklist. That's going to make a copy of this Google Sheet that she's showing us right now.
Yeah, do it. We've had like 1,000 people who wanted a copy of it. So please take more. We're happy if people use it. And as well, if you do end up using it, let me know. Like add me on LinkedIn and just send me a ping if you do end up using it in some sort of way. I love hearing that that it's helpful and useful, because there's a lot of stuff on the internet that people give out for free. So I'd love to hear any feedback that anybody has on it too, because that's awesome. Cool. So we got down to CRO and positioning. I think there's a lot of stuff in here. External links. This one's a big one since Google came out this week and said that they're not important anymore. Is it this week that Google said that, or was it last month, or was it last year? I feel like they constantly say that. So same thing on a different week as far as I'm concerned. I think Gary says this stuff because he knows who's listening, is my perspective. But the internet runs on links. That's kind of how the internet works. So I don't see a bad thing of especially if you're talking about something that needs subject matter expert, is you link to external sources that are authoritative, right? I never find that a terrible thing to do, especially if you're talking about different content that has something to do with it, you know. You want to make sure that things are useful. So I think it's a little bit overthinking on links from folks these days. You just got to make sure that everything is natural. You know, if you're talking about that bike example, that it's like mountain bikes for like people who go down mountains, then make sure you link to another article that talks about the same thing. You know, it's making sure that authority goes through there. So we try to aim for 2 to 3 external links. You know, that's just kind of a guesstimate. Doesn't have to be a rule by any stretch of the imagination, which is an important part that I wanted to point out, because I feel people get very nuanced on links. So please don't take this as like rules. These are just guesses on what we find that works. Cool. On to images. We talked a little bit about this before, but using in-product images as much as you have. Since we work with a lot of B2B SaaS companies, like as much as you can show what they're buying, the better. It's wonderful to show the insides of the product and who's working for it and the ins and outs of things. You know, if you're buying that speed bike that's from a mountain that goes down the mountain, you're spending thousands of dollars on it, you would want to see a picture of the bike, right? You would want to see a picture of the bike going over holes and going in ditches and going through a mountain, all these things. So like I apply those same thinking towards like SaaS websites and B2B SaaS websites, making sure that they pull that up. Is I'm kind of done seeing stock images on SaaS websites. That is a hill I will die on, is I'm kind of done seeing stock images on websites. So please add in real people. It is more work, but like you're going to differentiate yourself from everybody else in the pack. or use like illustrations. You have so many options out there, especially with AI. Like I said, like you can have your designers go wild. Please give them this as a task and have them enjoy the ride of it. And then it'll make your SEOs happy too. Cool. Anything else on images? Adding image. What else did we have? Optimizing size of images. That is the size physically of the image and the size of the kilobytes or the megabytes, or the size of that. My favorite tool on the entire internet to use, I'm gonna butcher it now, aren't I? It's an image called it's a thing called Squoosh, SQUOOSH.app. It's a single image resizer, but it's a Google open source project, which is why I love it so much. It has a silly name, but its goals are aligned with what you're doing. So Squoosh.app is my favorite one. Thank you. To use throughout the internet. And it's fantastic. Like I said, it's got a silly name, but it does all the things that you need to do in order to make sure that your images will be properly sized, properly sized, like space wise and kilobyte wise. Like everyone's got through those lighthouse reports and seen like we have to squish our images. So this way is an easy way to do that anybody can do, which I love. Yeah, and then next on our list was adding multiple images to break up the content. Another reason to use Squoosh, because once you add multiple images, then the page gets really heavy, and then you have to worry about everybody else looking at said page, right? So making sure that you use something like Squoosh. I know people like tiny PNG and stuff, so I think we all roll our own. But I really like them because, like I said, it's a Google open source project. I don't think they've updated it lately. But yeah, they and they even write on their website that images never leave your device since Squoosh does all the work locally. So thanks. They actually care about our privacy too. Another reason to like Squoosh. And it's fun to say. Who doesn't like saying Squoosh? I do. I love one. Then we move into insights gathering, which is a big part of what we've been doing with clients lately, which I don't know if a lot of other SEOs do. I know a few out there do it, and I think it's really, really helpful. And it's a good way to differentiate yourself and prove more value to you and your clients out there. If you can ask your clients if they have any interviews with their customers or anything, sales materials, sync with their customer support teams, review industry specific newsletters, the more you can connect yourself to that industry and understand the goals of that industry and what they're trying to do, I think the better setup you're going to be for your SEO goals, which include revenue. The more you can make your graphs go up and to the right, the happier your clients are going to be, or the happier your company is going to be that you work with, or the happier whoever it is that you're working with is fantastic. So I think the more that information that you can gather and the more you can use to do that kind of stuff, the better positioned you'll be when you're presenting information to them, right? So it's fantastically wonderful to do all that stuff, which we've been a big proponent of. So I'd like to see more SEOs talk about this kind of stuff too. I think it's really helpful. Cool. And then we move on to internal links in here, which is, this is a big one. And if anybody has any fun tools for this one, I'd be open to it because I haven't found incredible tools for these guys, internally linking. I have found ones, but they're at scale. They're at a huge scale that I can't understand putting the money towards for it. So if anybody has any internal linking tools that will bubble up everything for me, that would be amazing. Because these days we've been pulling keyword research into clusters, right? So we do things based off of topics, and then we present those as ideas to the clients, and try to understand that that's where we're going to go. So we're going to build out your stuff, and half of that includes internal linking, right? Making sure that these two semantically linked things go together. So I've tried a bunch of tools, and some of them do work and they're great, but I don't think anything currently beats you physically going through the site and doing it yourself, which is just boring and really boring, but it is something that honestly works. I've found so many wonderful things, especially between the intents of the site is a big one that I've found that's really, really helpful. If you have a lot of blog content that's like bottom or middle of funnel stuff and linking that back to the product page, including that in more resources to like bridge that intent gap that's in there so that you can kind of understand that and show Google that all these things are topically connected together. I found a lot of value in doing those things, which is basically the TLDR of all of those internal links. We put on here that the first link holds more weight. I read that somewhere. And I think that was from somewhere a long time ago. I don't remember the context of it, but this is another time where I said, like add 2 to 3 external links. Please don't take that as gospel. Everything in SEO, and I've seen so many more people talk about these days, is test it yourself. Like as much as Tyler and I do this as our normal day jobs, please test it yourself too. We need more people who come back and are like, yes, I've tested that the first link holds the most weight in the internet, and I need to tell the world about that because I would love to read those as well. So don't just blindly listen to us and like run that into the gamut. I've just read this a whole bunch of times, so I do it. And I try to make sure there's a link in the first 100 words, kind of deal within whatever both, which I've heard for years, but I've never been able to like give that any crazy merit. So I want to make that and add that in as a caveat within what we're doing here. Okay, so moving on to meta descriptions. My only takeaway from meta descriptions at this point is to include a CTA. Click here, not just click here as well. Please, death to click here as well. If you're internally linking, externally linking, I just don't care who you are throughout the internet. My second hill that I will die on is I wish click here just would not be a thing anymore, because I think we've evolved past people understanding what click here means and where it goes and what it does. You can be better than click here. You are all better than click here. So, try to like find out more information over here. Even that, Google actually has a whole page on their website about spammy link anchors as well. And click here is obviously the first one because that's the biggest one that goes in there. So find that on the internet too, because I've included that in multiple audits that we've done, and I'm like, listen, this is you guys are low on the internet totem pole at this point. Please, let's help you with your internal linking thing. Right. But meta descriptions is including a CTA, and I definitely think it is a huge opportunity, especially in e-com, right? Like you're trying to get that buyer intent right out of the gate. If you don't have CTAs on your meta descriptions and your product pages, please go right now and rewrite them all right now. Because that's where you want people to buy something from you. So please, like even if it says buy my product now or like sign up for our newsletter or something, you can definitely be that. Be bold and you can do these. And that moves us on to readability, which is something that I think a lot of writing software includes these days. I like to use a software called Lex. It is an AI, and it includes a lot of this stuff in it. Simple sentence structures, active voice usages, consistent tenses, not using like is or was in the same sentence. Like limiting jargon again. Here we go. So what is this? Third time we're limiting jargon. Utilizing bullet points and lists, numbered lists for the win, and a bullet point. If your TLDR at the top of your page that you're just like summarizing all the stuff in is in bulleted lists too, go for it. If you have like top 3 takeaways from this blog post, I've seen that used a whole bunch. Please use it. I love that. My favorite site that does this really well is bankrate.com, American, and they're in a big, expensive niche, right? Like they're in financial, and they do a great job of like the top takeaways of their pages. And I believe they do bulleted lists too in there, which I really love. I really love that they do that. Employing synonyms and variations, which is also a great thing to do. If you're missing out on any of those, check out Lex. Yeah, lex.page. They do a great little AI thing, and they help you with like structuring your sentences and making sure that your writing is readable and notable throughout, for not just you. Because we find a lot of like times people write as subject matter experts and then nobody knows what they're talking about, right? But you need to make sure that the most amount of people can read what you're doing. Cool. On to search intent. And this is definitely something that I think a lot of search SEOs can do more is Google the terms that you're looking for to rank for. Please, for the love of all cheese and crackers on the internet, if you're looking to rank for something, Google the terms that you're looking to rank for, and then look at the search engine ranking page. Is the page that you're looking to rank for, does it fit within the results that you see that are fitting there? Because if it doesn't, I'm sorry, you're going to have an uphill battle that's going to be very hard, and you're going to not like your life for a very long time. If there are no videos showing in the search page, then you're going to have a really hard time with video. If there are no images in the search page, then you're going to have a really hard time with images. If you're trying to rank your homepage when it's all internal pages, you're going to have a really hard time in those kinds of things. So put on your detective hat and look at the search engine ranking page, please, because that is going to show you also who your search competitors are and not just who your competitors are. We do this with all our audits is we ask people who their search competitors are and who their actual competitors are, which sometimes line up to be the same people, but sometimes are completely different and you would never know. And every once in a while we'll show them another competitor and they're like, oh, I didn't even know these people existed on the internet. And I'm like, yeah, they're buying up some of your search share too. So so many things that you can deduce from this as well. Like I could do an hour on just looking at the search and and seeing what goes into that, right? And then we fly down into strategy. So this is another big one, is aligning with the KPIs of your team or whoever you're talking to. I had a call literally this week with somebody who was in the demand gen team talking about rankings. They wanted me to report on rankings. So I didn't know what that meant. And I don't want us to start off on the wrong foot. So I got on a call with them and I was like, cool. What is your understanding of what ranking means? Because here's what mine is. And I'd like to hear what yours is. And we had like a 15-minute conversation and we came together and we both knew the way forward. We both understand the KPIs. We both understand what rankings means to her and to me. And we're both going to be able to go to the same goal of getting more search traffic to the place. So making sure that you understand the KPIs and metrics that will determine success for the organization is of utmost importance. And then also understanding what the unique angle is that you're trying to highlight. For me in SEO, it's usually like what kind of target that you're looking to rank in. Like your big search section, like if you're in mountain bikes, right? Like you're looking to rank for mountain bikes, I imagine. But in SaaS and in tech, we get a lot of like made up stuff that people are trying to do as category builders. So making sure that you understand that unique angle that they're doing and that they're not going to pivot it in 6 months and change up the whole strategy is also a thing that you need to say out loud to people. This might be a hot take, but please, I've seen that happen too, is we spend 6 months like building up your direction and everything. And then they're like, no, we bought 3 new companies and we need to pivot to this instead. I'm like, oh, nuts. Which sucks.
That's what keeps us employed.
Exactly. Yeah. Totally agree. Which also goes into your title tag a lot of the time, right? Like usually you find out what niche or what thing you're trying to understand into your title tag. Does it include your target keyword or your messaging or your niche that you're going after? Is it mountain bikers for like super skinny dudes or only dudes who like to bike upwards on mountains and don't like to go down on mountains, or like, I'm sure that would have something to do with Red Bull. But yeah, like that's your unique value prop, right? Like, and they talk about this a lot in e-com, right? Like, what's your unique value prop? That's the same in everything, because otherwise you're not going to be selling to everyone. You can't. It's unimaginable to sell to everyone. You need to like point in a direction of something. Cool. Then we get down to URLs, this is pretty standard stuff, but I'm going to say it all out loud, is to try to keep them as short as possible, to keep them as descriptive as possible, and to keep them as clean as possible. And using subfolders, please. I know, like, I'm trying to make a case with one of my clients to move a subdomain to a subfolder. It's a thing, because it needs to be a business case as well as not just an SEO case at these days. But the more that you can kind of own your own whole domain and have everything in a subfolder, I love that. So much better than living on subdomains. I know it's easier technically to do a subdomain, like DNS wise and internet wise, sure, okay, and that's why people have done this. But subfolders, I love a subfolder, and I've never seen it go down negatively if you move something to a subfolder. So having stuff on subfolders is really great. And then you get those lovely little breadcrumbs in Google as well that show you that you're this far down the website, right? Google reads that stuff, which is wonderful and lovely. Yeah. How far are we down? Are we okay? Yeah, we're down to UX and technical and then video. Yay! So UX and technical. This is where it gets kind of into like not really SEO territory over it, right? Because now we're kind of like putting on our UX hat or our developer hat, right? We look at every page of the site should be responsive, which is honestly a dev's job. But like, if you find something that isn't responsive, then please make friends with your devs. I've seen a lot of people who like say they make friends with devs, but I legitimately make friends with devs. I don't see them as an opposition in any stretch of the imagination. I never positioned myself as an opposition as a developer, and I don't think anybody ever should. Is if I did something wrong as a developer, please tell me and I'm happy to fix it. If you found something on the site that's wrong and you need to tell a developer, I think that's your due diligence to find and tell them, right? Having sure every index page should be included in the sitemap. This is pretty standard practice as well, but misses the mark on so many audits that we do. So many audits. It's wild how much I see that this happens because of all the things that can go along with this. This gets really technical, right? Like canonicals, which we don't even, that's like something that you should never use in front of a C-level. There's a term you should never use in front of a C-level. Because they don't know what that is. Nobody needs to know what that is. Making sure all your important pages have like, have meta tags and that everything's followed. I could honestly buy a cookie at a grocery store for the amount of time that I found pages that should be indexed that shouldn't be indexed, and vice versa. It's just something that ends up happening throughout the web. If you are really into doing that, there's a whole bunch of extensions that really work for that. Christina Azareco has one that's like the SEO Pro extension that can show you all these things. Hers is really great, as well as the detailed SEO Pro extension. I use both of them interchangeably just because they have different features that I enjoy. Yeah. And then another good UX one is adding a table of contents at the top. I worked with a client who, hand to God, did not want to do this for the life of their website. And they just added one a month ago after working. Yeah. So in a different form or fashion, but they like, yeah. So table of contents are really great for adding internal links, that internal linking thing. And then sometimes you get those funky little links in the SERP underneath it, right? Table of contents, AKA known as jump links in some fashions. I've heard people use those in different whatever. Anyway, it's just adding jump links to make sure that you can send people to the depth of the page. And then on to structured data. Like I said before, make friends with a schema person. If you're looking for one, Dave Ojeda is fantastic. Google that name, folks. He will help you and anyone. I message him all the time. He does all the wonderful things about like FAQ schema, article schema, the rating review schema, all that stuff. Then there's like, is your page fast? You know, that's kinds of stuff. And then the last one that we have on here really that I'd love to talk about is the author box, which I've seen a lot of folks attribute directly to EEAT, expertise, experience, authority, and trust, but I don't really think it's for that reason fully. I think it's just a great thing to have. I think it's wonderful to know who's writing the content, and if that person is also a subject matter expert, I think that's even better, because then you're gonna want to know more about that, right? Yeah. Last one on the list here is video, which is a huge opportunity, I think, throughout the internet. The internet at the moment, I feel like, is shifting from introverts like Tyler and myself hiding behind the internet and just chit-chatting and stuff to people who like want to be on video all day. I don't want to be on video all day, unfortunately. But that seems to be where we're all going. So do you have video that supports your content? Because I have a client who shifted a whole bunch of their budget for like writing content to video content, which I think is an interesting move. And I actually agreed with them to do that because they've answered all the questions that they need to on their written content. So now they're creating video content for. Not everybody consumes content the same way. Like, right? I think that's a right brain, left brain thing. Right? Like if you're consuming content and you're a written person, that means you're like I don't know, left brain or right brain. My brain's still fuzzy, so I apologize, but I think it's one of those kinds of things. So, and then you can link your video back to your website and have it within your blog post as well. We helped a content creator who did a lot of that, and he is currently writing out like these long diatribes from his YouTube videos because his YouTube channel is so big, but he doesn't have like a website to go along with it. So yeah, he's doing the hard work there. Yeah. I think that's the whole list. I've talked for so long, Tyler.
Jess, that was amazing. Yes, and you did go through almost every single bullet point, which is impressive.
Oh my God. I'm going to stop sharing then. Is that stop sharing? I did. Yay!
Awesome. Cool. Well, let's just do a couple things here to kind of wrap things up. So just for a quick time check, we've got about 9 minutes left. So first of all, folks in the chat, thanks for joining us. If you have questions for Jess about any specific items, anything that wasn't on the list, anything that you're thinking about in terms of content and SEO, pop that in the chat. We'll have Jess give some thoughts and feedback there. Really quick, before we jump into some of the questions that have already been shared, I just want to mention one more time, if you want to grab a copy of this checklist that Jess has just gone through, bit.ly/Jess checklist, that's going to make a copy of it. You can grab that there. Jess also mentioned you can follow her on Twitter or LinkedIn. Pop over there. I know she shares a bunch of great content like this, very practical, actionable kind of content that helps you think through it, which, by the way, is one thing that I just wanted to mention is that I love this checklist because I think it sort of works on both sides of the table, right? It's a great checklist to kind of share with a client, kind of work them through the process, even if there is some jargon in there that you might have to decode. But also if you're just thinking about how to deliver your work better and be more methodical and systematic about how do I work through the challenges my client might be facing, it's a great foundation for that, right? It goes through so many of the things that, again, maybe your client hasn't even thought about Schema yet. And that might not be something that you're going to see on a sort of a standard SEO audit, if you're using like a programmatic tool, but it's something to keep, that you want to go through and analyze as you're trying to help them build their search presence. So love that.
Yeah, we try to include like systems within our tactics at this point. I'm like super tactical. So like pairing that systems with the tactics and making sure it includes the strategy, I think is where the magic happens.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, as just to recap there, especially as as things continue to get more complex, we have more and more things that we're considering from that sort of fall under the umbrella of SEO in the broadest sense. Again, having that foundation, having that system where you can say, okay, I'm going to add some new things to this checklist, or I'm going to adjust it slightly based on what we're seeing with the new algorithm updates or whatever's happening. It's going to save you so much time and energy and pain and suffering.
Yeah, because we're still in the March update, right? Like we're on day 3,462.
For sure. Cool. Well, once again, I just want to mention really quick in the chat, we've been dropping, Jess has been dropping several items. So if you're looking for those, the Squoosh.app she mentioned. She also mentioned Lex as a writing and kind of readability optimization type of tool. And she also gave a shout out to Dave Ojeda. I'm not sure how he pronounces that. But yeah, some folks were asking about his website, so you can find that here in the chat. And yeah, let's, I know we've got at least one good question in here. So Casey was wondering, kind of going back to that idea of like how you actually deploy this kind of a checklist. Again, kind of walk us through the process of how you use this with an actual client.
Sure. We usually go through this with like the content teams or whoever our point of contact is within the organization, and we'll go through actually this content list. So like the dirty, ugly, like this is a spreadsheet meant for them and for us to do it through as an exercise. And then if we do need to present this data, as Casey's asking about, then we would make some sort of deck or document based off of it, because nobody really needs to read another checklist. Is especially if some of the takeaways from this checklist are building things or getting buy-in from dev or getting buy-in from another part of the organization. If you have to talk to demand gen or marketing or any other person within the organization, odds are you're going to have to make that case for them. So do the checklist with your point of contact or like whoever has the most information that you can glam from them and be like, does this look good? And then we end up making some sort of presentation or emails or documents to go along with it that make more sense.
Makes total sense. Yeah. I think, again, going back to that communication layer of this work. And I think being able to translate this like actionable, practical, in the weeds kind of stuff into some kind of a visual or a story or something that helps, folks who are not in the weeds understand it is just so valuable.
Yeah, you can always use whimsical too, which is what we use for all of our like docs. Big fan of whimsical. Shout out to whimsical.
Love that. And then we had another question here. Does the FAQ schema still a thing for blogs after Google update? If not, what's the top schema for blogs? Thanks. Yeah, so I guess just talk us through kind of your present day understanding of schema and its role at the moment.
Yeah, for blogs, yes, 100%. You can make article schema, which is fantastic, and then it'll include like the author. So making sure that your schema matches whatever you have presently on your pages, right? Like that you're not just manufacturing this stuff. We always tend to add brand schema to sites at this point because that's really helpful. And then pull in rating schema as well for like those ones for the important pages. And then I don't really use FAQ schema as much. We still put in FAQs though, ironically enough. We don't really put in the FAQ schema, but for blogs, we use article schema or blog schema specifically because that stuff can still help you with the knowledge graphs and like making sure that you pull in the authors and have all of that images and all the things connect together in a holistic way.
Is it your understanding, does the FAQ schema help with like the people also ask boxes and that kind of stuff?
Sometimes, yeah, it doesn't really show you like as much as it visually used to in the SERPs, but it can help you with the people also ask. And I think it's good to answer those questions. Yeah. And I think it'll help with the AI future as well. Definitely.
Yeah, I was just gonna make that same point. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind is that, obviously Google, just like all these other companies, are sort of gobbling up all this content. And so the better they can understand that and sort of feed it into the LLM, I would assume the better chance we have to influence what those AI generated results and that kind of thing
Bang on.
are saying. Oh, yeah. Cool. Well, once again, we just have a couple minutes left, but if anybody has any final questions, feel free to pop those in the chat. But Jess, I just want to say thank you again so much for popping in here with us today and sticking it out, even though you're not feeling the best. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tyler. I've been looking forward to this, so I really appreciate it.
Cool, man. Well, again, thanks for joining us, and thanks for folks who joined us. If you haven't already, I'll recap one more time. Quick action items here, follow-ups for you. Number one, grab your copy of this checklist, bit.ly/Jess checklist. Find Jess on social media. You're gonna find her on Twitter/X and LinkedIn. And come join us in Tofu, which Jess is also a member of Tofu. So we'd love to have you there. I'm sure Jess will be happy to answer any follow-up questions or anything like that if you want to reach her that way. And you can join us at jointofu.co, our brand new website, and would love to see you inside our free Slack community.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, once again, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Jess, for taking the time. And we'll see you all in the next stream. Cheers.